Welcome to the shop. My name is Tavarish, and this is Wrench Every Day. Now, Jared is not here. He's at home doing whatever Jared does, but I want to talk to you guys about our little project, our 1990 Lotus Esprit Turbo SE, or Turbo Esprit SE. I don't know what the nomenclature is. I always get them mixed up, but this thing needs a lot of work. Now, the cylinder head is off at the shop getting rebuilt right now because a lot of the valves, actually most of the valves, got bent because there was an issue with the timing belt. Some of the teeth came off and it caused a little bit of engine damage. But that is on its way here, and hopefully we'll have a running and driving Lotus. But until then, I wanted to talk to you guys about this car and what the plans for it are. You see, this is an old car. I'm not really a fan of old cars because they don't drive well and they can look a little bit better, especially when you modern them up a little bit. And what I wanted to do with this is to make it a resto mod. Basically make it as good as a 2021 Lotus with all its technology, with all its looks, and hopefully all its performance. But I wanted to also have something to compare it to, a 2021 Lotus, so we can see what one has and then what the other one will have. So that's why I got this. Oh boy. Now welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 2021 Lotus Evora GT. I did not buy this car. This was on loan to me by Lotus Cars, and honestly, it looks fantastic. If you take a look at the lines, it really does have that awesome rakish look. Everything kind of flows into itself. It doesn't have any straight angles. That's pretty much all straight angles, and it has a ton of performance. Now, before I go into all of this, I should let you know that this is not going to be like a driving review or anything like that because I have nothing to compare it to. I've never driven a Lotus Esprit before, and I've certainly never driven this one. It doesn't run. So we're just going to talk about all the things that I'd like to put from this car onto that one. And also we could mention a few things that I like about this one that are absent on the new hotness. Now let's begin with the styling, which is really in your face on this new car. On the front, you have these really, really big grills, and then you have the grills on the bonnet and this awesome carbon fiber weave, like this herringbone thing, the symmetrical pattern that I really, really like. Obviously, that is completely absent in this because I don't even think carbon fiber was invented back then. It actually was, but I don't think that they were using it in anything like this application. You can see on the bottom, these holes for air are very, very small, so we should open those up. I'm definitely going to get a new bumper, something that is a little bit more stylish, maybe an S4S bumper or a V8 bumper, the ones with a little bit more of a rakish look and a little bit more of a sleek look. But on the bonnet, it would be cool to integrate something like you see here, but honestly, I don't think that would work out very well with the styling of this. It's a very kind of minimalistic. So I think on Lotus, less is more, especially on this Lotus, because Lotus is all about being light. This car looks very light because it has carbon fiber bits, it has a bunch of open air stuff, it has this nice little scoop there like a race car. It has carbon fiber that goes all the way down. It really looks the part of a very light car, but that actually acts the part of a very light car because despite what it looks like, this thing weighs the better part of 3,100 pounds, which is not super heavy. It's not super light. It's somewhere in the middle, especially for a sports car. But this is way, way, way lighter, to the tune of like 500 or 600 pounds lighter, which makes a huge difference when it comes to power to weight. Now, when I talk about power to weight, I should probably talk about how much power this has. And when I do that, I should probably show you the engine. Now, what you're looking at here is a 3.5 liter V6 taken from a Toyota Camry with a supercharger on the top. This big thing is a supercharger and I'm guessing an intercooler setup as well. You can see the supercharger belt right there, and it is a pretty complicated yet elegant setup. I wouldn't want to do any sort of spark plugs or anything on this car because you'd have to take off a lot of stuff. But this should be a very reliable power plant. What I want for my car, however, is the same sort of reliability. That has a 2.2 liter turbocharged inline 4, and to be honest, I think that is probably the better engine because you don't have to do a ton of work to make that 400 horsepower. This has 400 horsepower, a little bit more than that actually, from the factory, but I wager that if you wanted to ask more of this engine, you'd run into a lot of issues because the V6 wasn't rated for it, the supercharger wasn't rated for it, and the engine bay, which is really, really cramped, isn't rated for it. If you look down here, you'll see that these spark plugs really aren't too hard to get to, but then you get back here and then you have no room at all. If something breaks on the inside of that or on the side of the engine, I wager that that's probably a little bit harder to get to. You'd have to take off the wheel and liner and probably whatever's underneath there. But on that car, on the Esprit, everything really is in arm's reach. It isn't that hard to do. And the fact that Jared took the cylinder head off in basically an hour, that means that that car is super, super easy to work on and super easy to maintain. We aren't done back here yet because you see that this is the trunk of the car, and that is the only trunk that you have in this car, the only real storage other than the storage behind the seats, and I'll get to that later. This is okay if you want to have maybe one carry-on or some groceries. The only issue is that this engine produces a lot of heat. That engine's heat goes into an exhaust, which then goes into resonators, and it goes to a catalytic converter, which also get very, very hot, and the exhaust comes out right here. So the exhaust is going underneath the parcel shelf, and it's heating up everything in here. So whatever you put in here, it will get quite toasty. So I wouldn't do anything like electronics. I wouldn't do anything like ice cream or really anything that you wouldn't have boiling at some point in its life. One thing I absolutely love is the fact that this has so many carbon fiber bits, and they paid attention to aerodynamics, which the Esprit really doesn't have in any sort of way. So this has an awesome diffuser right here. You see the mesh, and it really looks very race car-y, and you have the center exhaust, which I definitely want in the Esprit. Then you go up here, there's some carbon on the bumper, the carbon right here, and this entire bumper is carbon. It's just painted because then the paint gets exposed and you see the carbon right here. That is awesome. I don't even know if they make bumpers for the Esprit in carbon fiber or make any sort of body panels in carbon fiber, but I hope they do because this would be a really good addition to make the car a little bit lighter and a little bit more sporty looking. One thing that this car gets, however, very, very right is the stance. Look how low this thing is. Look how the arch is almost completely perfect. Like the fender gap is so good all around the wheel. And then if you take a look at this, and oh boy, that is like a monster truck gap. I know that there's no engine in there, but it really doesn't change much from there. That needs a lot of help. I guess they didn't have that as a priority in the 90s. They just said, oh, put wheels on it and make them look kind of cool. This is a complete game changer. These are 19s and 20s, actually 19 and 20 on Michelin Sport Cup 2 tires, and they have some amazing AP Racing brakes. AP Racing is actually the brake manufacturer that makes the brakes for my McLaren 675 LT. These are not carbon ceramics, but they are very large, and they do a very, very good job. Just take a look at what you have here. These are the front brakes, and look at look at the distance between the caliper and the wheel. I mean, you could barely fit a piece of paper in there. And on here, I have no idea what kind of brakes they are. This is in the era where they didn't care about braking at all. As long as the car could stop somewhat, that was okay. This is probably a very expensive component. Don't tell Lotus I did this. Oh, okay, there we go. So I'm not a big fan of this clamshell where you can't see anything. It tells you don't rely on the reverse camera, but like what other options are there? You can't do anything else. You want, like, take a look. Can you see anything? I'm gonna show you what this looks like from the back. This car has some of the worst blind spots I've ever seen in any car, and I have a Lamborghini Murcielago. So this blind spot is enough to hide many cars, many motorcycles, and you basically have to pray when you're going into another lane. This is just atrocious, which is why I like this setup way more. You have a lot of glass here, you have glass on the inside, and I'll show you that you can actually see right here. You can see inside the car. All the glass is foggy, but if you go inside the car and I need to look behind you, I mean, other than being like super foggy and dirty, the visibility really is quite good. So here you actually have a decent amount of headroom, and they also made a decent amount of headroom for people in the back. They didn't make a lot of leg room for people in the back because if you have legs, that's not, I mean, this is not the car for you. I don't even know why this is called a 2+2. This makes no sense. This is just a two-seater, just like that is. But in the old car, you see that space is somewhat at a premium. It's not somewhat at a premium, it's really at a premium. You can't fit anything in this car, especially if you're a man of considerable size like I am. Now, I am in the passenger seat, which doesn't have a steering wheel in it, and while this does have a sort of deep well where I could put my feet, that's it. Like I can't go anywhere else. But when you're over here, your knees are hitting the dash, your knees are hitting the steering wheel, and I think this car could benefit from some tall man mods and also some better seat mods, because these are a little more than pads on the back of the firewall here. So if I have better seats and a better flow for the styling on the interior, then I think this would modern it up a lot. I mean, take a look at this. This is all an afterthought. Where are we going to put the speakers? Right there. Where are we going to put the glove box? I don't know. Just like here and then put, I don't know. So this I would love to redesign, or at least just make it a little bit more fancy. What do I mean by more fancy? It's not just a general term. I mean stuff like this. On the door panel, you have Alcantara, you have stitched leather with red and white. You have an awesome design here, which actually is shared with the Esprit. You have LED lighting. You have things like a awesome turned, what looks like aluminum shift knob. You have carbon fiber that's exposed here, which I'm not a super huge fan of, but carbon fiber in small bits on the interior can look really snazzy. You have everything that looks like it was made with a purpose and function, because in part it was. Now, the ergonomics aren't the best. They are actually some of the worst that I've seen in a car, but it looks really cool. These are carbon back seats, but after a long drive, I'm usually reaching for a pillow or a chiropractor or something. And these seats, they're very comfortable. So I would love to have something like this, something OEM and something more modern in that Esprit, just so I can get rid of those ugly seats. One thing I'd really like to emulate is the exhaust noise. Now, the exhaust noise is not going to sound the same. That's a 4-cylinder. This is a 6. But if we can make it sound somewhat similar, I think that'll be a step in the right direction. But now let's talk about overall scope of this project. This car is a very expensive car. It starts at around $96,000. And this car was purchased for about $10,000. Now, there is a really big gap between the two, but I think that this can turn into a 6-figure car when all this is done. At least it can compete with 6-figure cars of the modern era. So the way I'm going to do that, just to recap, is we are going to take care of all of the cosmetic stuff. We're going to do a new body kit, maybe some carbon fiber bits. Definitely want to do a diffuser like this one has in the rear. Definitely want to do a center exhaust. We definitely want to have something more modern in terms of engine management, in terms of ECU, in terms of cooling, in terms of turbocharging. All that stuff has to add up to around 300 to 400 plus horsepower, because that's what this has. And I think in a lighter body, you're going to be able to tell the difference real quick. We're also going to work on the wheels and tires. This has stock 14s right here and 15s right there. Nobody needs to be rocking 14s. This needs to get upgraded. The wheels and tires are going to get upgraded. The brakes are going to get upgraded. And also everything else in terms of paint work. Obviously the paint needs work, but I'm thinking instead of doing a light color, we can do a dark color with some carbon accents, because man, I am really digging that look. Now in the interior, we're going to get rid of these ripped seats. We're going to put in some racing or race-inspired bucket seats. Definitely want to go with something more OEM like the Lotus has, maybe something carbon back, and we're going to do everything on the interior, including just recovering all of this garbage. And we're going to do something like a stitching which has Alcantara on top and leather on bottom, or vice versa. Definitely want to have some more nice materials, some more exotic materials. We definitely want to get rid of that wood and get some better gauges, better lighting all around. A stainless steel shift knob, maybe some work on the climate control right there, make sure everything works there. And then work on some of the creature comforts. Maybe we can add something like a heated and cooled seat. I'm not a big fan of that, but it is definitely possible, and we can do it on a budget. Now, I know what project creep is. Project creep is what happens with every single other project that I have on my channel and also Wrench Every Day. It happens a lot because you look at a car and you look at what it could be, not what it is. So that's why I want to temper expectations and make this still a budget build. And everything that I listed so far, that can definitely be done, because we're going to be changing all this stuff anyway. Now, what I want to do afterwards is some seat time, honestly. I want to get this car around a track. I want to get this on a good canyon road or a twisty road. There's not a lot of canyon roads in Florida, honestly. But a good twisty road is what this car is going to be built for, and I can't wait to do that. And right now, I'm just waiting on that cylinder head to get here. So in the next episode, you guys are going to see that come together, get the car running, see how it drives, and then start our long process. Maybe not so super long, but start the big process of transforming this into this, or maybe something a little bit better than this, so this can become the supercar that I've always dreamed of, and I know it can be. So this is me, Tavarish, reminding you to always make questionable choices and buy cars with emblems that look like poop emojis.